Good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder and this is BRN AM for Thursday, July 2nd, 2020. Here are our top stories. Business leaders sour on the economic outlook and conquering a crisis for a century-old wealth manager. Joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Devin Banerjee. He's Senior Financial Services Editor for LinkedIn, and he's also the editor of the This Week in Finance newsletter, which you can find on the LinkedIn platform. Devin, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Always good to be with you, Jeff.
It's good to talk with you, and I got to say, we're doing it a day early because of the Independence Day holiday, where we're going to go, kind of do a best of show rather than do a live show. But really appreciate you coming on, and also appreciate that we're both wearing the same outfit today. So you look great, Devin.
As do you, Jeff. We did not properly coordinate this morning.
we did not coordinate, but the audience should know that. So Devin, many times in your show, we often talk about what is happening in the financial and economic markets, and you've got some very interesting insight from some business roundtable, some CEOs, and what their outlook may be. What can you tell us here?
That's right, Jeff. So this week, the Business Roundtable, which is a group of CEOs from some of the largest American companies, released its second quarter economic outlook survey. This is a really nice window directly into what CEOs' expectations are going forward for capital spending, hiring, expectations for sales over the coming 6 months. The survey is conducted anonymously, and so a lot of people find CEOs to be a lot more candid and really look to these results for what they can expect going forward. So this composite index, came in at 34.3. What that means is a drop of 38 points from just the first quarter of this year. That's also the lowest reading for this index since the second quarter of 2009, which was really the depths of that financial crisis. So obviously, a consistent reading with, the National Bureau of Economic Research's determination that the U.S. has entered a recession. These businesses, some of the largest across the country, are experiencing that, firsthand every day. But in this survey, there were some nuances and some actually additional questions posed to the CEOs due to the coronavirus pandemic. So I want to bring you some other takeaways I found really interesting. 100% of these CEOs said they have or plan to have, if they haven't returned to work, physical distancing and other social health measures in their workplaces. A lot of people picked up on that. 100%, everyone across the board. So even as Yeah, it is good news. So even as across the country, as we see politicians and local leaders and others, debating sometimes the merits of these health measures, 100% of these CEOs said they will have it or have it already. More than 2/3 have expanded wellness support and behavioral health services for employees. A lot of people picked up on that as a really kind of progressive, good sign. Again, leadership teams being more responsive, more responsible to employees' needs during this time. And on that similar point, 95% of the CEOs said they have expanded flexible work arrangements in their companies. Now, looking to the recovery and the prospects for that, most CEOs said they expect business conditions in their companies to recover by the end of 2021. But that was just over 50%. 27%, more than 1 in 4, said they actually do not expect a recovery in their businesses to pre-pandemic levels until after 2021. I think a lot of people are going to be watching that number closely. And of course, you and I have talked about some other surveys and economic indicators about that, recovery timeline. We look at what members of the FOMC at the Fed expect, for interest rates and the economy. So a lot of those signals about how long this is expected to last, I think those are going to be of real focus going forward. And look, just to sum it all up, I found one of our LinkedIn members, Deborah Batcher, she's a CEO in the food business, really summed it up. These Business Roundtable, results. She said you can't. There's very few ways to sugarcoat this. She said you can't sugarcoat it. we can't will our way through this or rally our way through this or webinar our way through this. She said we can't just keep having webinars. She said this is going to be a really tough slog through 2021 or beyond.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is, again, another piece of economic and financial data that we're getting, in addition to what we covered last week, which is but LinkedIn's workforce survey, confidence survey. I guess recovery depends on what sector of the economy you're in, right, Devin? I mean, clearly there are segments of the economy, restaurants, food services, hospitality. I mean, you've gone through these at length on the network several times. Will take longer to recover. It really is going to depend. And the most important thing is no one knows. I mean, we can have best guesses, but I think every day and every week that you and I chat, we learn another piece of information, and we're just going to have to wait and see like everybody else. There's no one out there who's got the magic 8-ball.
It's true. It's really week by week or month by month, and you start seeing some of these effects or ripple effects of the uncertainty. One of which, another story we featured this week that really got a lot of attention is, look, here in the U.S., millions are out of work right now. Many of them are behind on their debts and those payments. And because of a provision in the CARES Act, actually, in many cases, these missed payments aren't reflected in credit scores, or they're not uniformly recorded on borrowers' credit reports. And what that means as a result is it's created this, what someone called a credit blind spot that has led banks to really pull back sharply on lending to U.S. consumers right now. So, obviously in some respects, that's a good thing. Credit losses are being prevented. But, at a high level, what it's doing is slowing the flow of money. And you and I have talked about this in the past, that can become, if that snowballs, a really dangerous seizing up of the flow of money and the extension of credit. So in surveys by the Federal Reserve recently, all of the banks have said that they have tightened their lending standards for all consumer loan categories that those surveys are tracking. So that's going to be another indicator, if you will, that people will be tracking quite closely.
I think you're right, Devin. I mean, when you were describing that, the word that comes to mind is stickiness and getting unstuck. So it's going to take capital. Right now, we have capital infusion through the CARES Act, the stimulus. I know that you and I have spoken about this. We've spoken with other contributors, both here and on the podcast, that there potentially could be another round of stimulus. It sounds like that this is going to take time. And look, I'm not one who really is going to argue for more government intervention, but it sounds like whatever they are doing or have done will need to be continued, or else things are really going to drop out. So we're down this road. Now that we're down this road, we need to continue to act. It'll be interesting to see what regulators, legislators, and people at the Fed and Treasury, actually where they wind up when it comes to this.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, one phrase you just used really stood out to me, which was, now that we're down this road, it will need to continue, which is that the bar has been set, the expectation has been set for support, fiscal support, as well as support in the respective monetary policy. And as that and I think we talked about this last week, Jeff, as that slows or recedes naturally, because there are, horizons on many of these programs, as that slows or recedes, things can get gummed up, as you said. They can get stuck again, and the flow of money can slow. So as even Fed Chair Jay Powell has been saying, the expectation is that fiscal and monetary support will need to continue throughout this.
It's going to be interesting to watch. Well, Devin, always an interesting topic hearing what CEOs have to say, along with all the economic data. I want to go to a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to hear how one wealth manager is reinventing itself to deal with some of the challenges put forth by the coronavirus and the changing environment when it comes to financial planning. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
The windows on our homes, they protect us and the ones we love, but they do much more. At Renewal by Andersen, making your home more comfortable is at the center of every window we make. It's why we custom build our windows in America and install them in as little as 1 day. It's why we build our frames with exclusive FIBREX composite material that's 2 times stronger than vinyl. It's why our glass helps keep your home warmer in winter, cooler in summer, and quieter all year long. It's why we stand behind every window with a 20-year limited warranty. Why not help lower your energy costs while giving your home and family the best? Call 1-800-835-6525 to schedule a free in-home consultation. Buy one, get one at 40% off with this special offer. Plus, get special financing with no money down, no monthly payments, and no interest for 1 full year. Renewal by Andersen, the better way to a better window. Call 1-800-835-6525 now.
Welcome back. We're talking to Devin Banerjee. He's Senior Financial Services Editor for LinkedIn. Devin, thanks so much for joining us in the program this morning.
Absolutely, Jeff. Happy to.
And I got to tell you, I love your tailor because he or she, they do a great job with your pick of color. Just amazing.
We were just joking for those viewers who don't see it in the commercial break that maybe next time I'll try pink, but then you might try pink, so we're going to have to coordinate next time.
Yeah, I mean, there is a rhyme and reason to how I do my wardrobe. Anyway, it's a whole different story. So this is a really interesting story, and what I like about it, Devin, is I believe in change, and I believe in smart change, and I believe in evolution, and I think the financial services industry really needs to evolve and change and adapt, especially with these unprecedented times. You recently wrote a piece for your Human Capital newsletter, which is another great newsletter people can follow, highlighting the new CEO of Edward Jones, the investment financial advisory firm. What can you tell us there?
Yeah, that's right, Jeff. This interview has really taken off just in the past 24 hours, candidly, since we published it. I recently sat down, virtually sat down with Penny Pennington. She's the new managing partner of Edward Jones, effectively their CEO. And she came in last year with, armed with strategic plans. She had been at the firm for 19 years before being named managing partner. This is a firm that's been around for 98 years, and lo and behold, a couple months into her tenure, the coronavirus pandemic begins. And so we really talked about what has changed in her strategic plans due to the pandemic, and why some of those things have changed and why some of those things haven't changed. And I'm going to highlight about 5 takeaways from this interview that I've seen readers really pick up on as well in the now flood of messages that I've been getting about this piece. So the first is this concept of distributed leadership. Edward Jones is in you've probably seen the branches around. They're in every state in the country in the U.S. and all provinces of Canada. 49,000 employees, 19,000 financial advisors. And what Penny realized as this pandemic began is that if she had one top-down, directive-driven, or what she called know-it-all approach to how to handle this pandemic, there's no way it would be applicable to every region that Edward Jones is present in, and to all, those advisors that they have and all the clients that they're serving. So what she really embraced was a model of distributed leadership. It's a way to empower regional leaders, line managers, and give them autonomy to figure out how to, handle this rapidly evolving situation on their own. Now, of course, there's a set of guiding principles underneath it that kind of come from the top. And Penny said, as an executive team, they put those to paper on March 17th, which you might remember was that Monday or Tuesday where things were just falling off the rails. Yep. So, set of guiding principles, sending that out to local leaders and empowering them. And she says, look, this is actually a model, this distributed leadership model is not just for her firm or for the wealth management business. She sees this really applicable across industries right now as consumer preferences are changing in different markets. Consumers want to be met where they are. Sometimes they want to shop or get their services online. Sometimes they want to be in person in a branch or a brick and mortar experience. And they want their experience to be personalized. They want, curated recommendations, all of that kind of stuff. And she says a top-down, know-it-all, directive-driven approach in big companies is just not going to work. So a lot of people, as I said, picked up on that as a really insightful takeaway. Second one I'll mention is, she said Edward Jones really realized very quickly throughout this economic downturn that we're now in that clients needed more complete advice from their advisors at Edward Jones than they needed in the past. So on top of financial well-being, they started getting requests or requests for advice about mental well-being, physical well-being, their own health. So Penny said, advisors had to train up a little bit on those topics to be able to serve their clients in a more complete way. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
The third one, a lot of people, so she and I talked about just her career, progression, especially being a woman in financial services. And the third one I want to highlight is really the humility that came through, I think, in a lot of the topics she discussed. So, one of them is she says, look, she realizes that Edward Jones is in a really privileged and blessed place because they're not an industry that has been really hampered due to this pandemic and economic downturn when so many other industries have been. So they identify about 42 million investors in the US who they say think and behave like long-term investors. They value advice and they have a long-term orientation. And she said, look, we serve 7 million of those today. And we see this 42 million, total addressable market in the US at least. So she's really dialing up growth plans. And again, she says she realizes that's a privileged position to be in. Fourth one, speaking about being a woman in financial services, a lot of our readers really appreciated this point in our interview. Penny said she sees being a woman in financial services as a privilege, not a disadvantage. She said, she was often the only woman at the table. Before becoming Edward Jones, she was in corporate and investment banking, especially then. She said she was the only woman at the table. And she said, look, I enjoyed that. She enjoyed bringing a perspective that she knew and could see was not being brought to the table. As she entered wealth management, she said she has taught fellow financial advisors who are men, how to better do their jobs with clients who are women and being around women and serving women and having that empathy that she naturally has toward women, but that her colleagues have not had. And she said she was happy to bring that to the table, and she challenges other women to do the same. And the fifth one, I know I've been going on for a while, but really just wrapping it up, is that concept of leaders who are know-it-alls. She says she says her new model of leadership is to be a learn-it-all, especially when we go through really rapidly evolving, unprecedented, of course we're all using that term, but periods like this that are very difficult to anticipate. She said a know-it-all leader will get stuck in those periods and the tide will go out and they'll be exposed as someone who's not in an adaptive mindset and a learning mindset and a growth mindset. So she says, what better an opportunity than right now for leaders to really show or embrace, if they haven't embraced it in the past, humility, vulnerability, and that learning and growth mindset. She thinks those are the leaders of the future, basically.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of really great information no matter what industry you're in. I think I love the whole piece, which is why we're talking about it, obviously. But the sense of decentralization, and I think you empower people to make decisions, is very, very rarely, in my experience, does a top-down approach ever work. I mean, it can work in things like the military, where you need to act very specifically to deal with threats, but in a corporate environment, decentralization, as long as you're adhering to certain principles, seem to make sense. The second thing, I love the idea of humility. We shouldn't take no one should take themselves too seriously. We all are human. We have our flaws, and it's important to have that humility because you can easily be in someone else's shoes, or someone else could be in your shoes. And then the last thing, I mean, Edward Jones, you were saying 98 years. They have seen the Great Depression. They've seen wars. They've seen so many different things, and they've seen the evolution of our business. And I think that the future of the business is exactly what she lays out, which you're not just thinking about hitting a financial milestone or a financial goal. It's all these things and how they wrap together and come together, and which is something that we strive for here on the network. And I think it kind of that really spoke to me. It's like, hey, all these things fit together. We need to figure out if we're delivering financial plans and advice to people and guidance, we need to fit them all together. So really amazing interview, Devin.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Jeff. And then on your last point, I really commend you and your network for focusing on this more holistic approach to financial health. And I think that's what Penny really highlighted as well, is that in the past, financial advisors used to kind of be pure play. Let's talk about your investments, your taxes, your spending, your budgeting, your income. And now she says, advisors are like family to their clients, and they talk about everything: mental health, physical well-being, just a holistic approach to health right now, especially right now during this pandemic.
Well, I've always believed, Devin, that the quantitative certainly is easier to talk about because you can point to numbers and say X, Y, and Z versus a benchmark, and that's a really easy conversation. What's not easy is the more qualitative things that you're describing and she is describing. So hopefully more people take note. This is a changing world. We all have to adapt, but a really great story. Devin, always a pleasure chatting with you. Really appreciate your insight. Great stories. I'm glad we could do this a day earlier in advance of the holiday. And I know you're taking the week off next week, so we will not have you on the show. So we'll be missing you, but we'll do our best to move forward.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. I appreciate it.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest or someone you think we should talk to? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, and more, check out today's edition of The Morning Pulse. Well, tomorrow it's the day before a holiday and the stock market is closed. So we're going to take the day off and we're going to have a very special best of edition for tomorrow's episode. And then, of course, for Independence Day, we're going to be completely dark with no show, but we will be back on Sunday with our Sunday podcast, BRN Sunday, where I'll be joined by members of the media, academia, financial services, and more to analyze all the news in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, and more. You're not going to want to miss it. So until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Attention! The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services has officially authorized new benefits that Medicare Advantage plans may include. To get the benefits you deserve, you can call the Medicare Coverage Helpline.
Hi, I'm Joe Namath. If you're on Medicare, this is important information. I called the Medicare Coverage Helpline and they instantly looked up my coverage. In this one simple call, they offered to enroll me in a plan that includes rides to medical appointments, private home aides, doctors and nurses' visits by telephone, and even home-delivered meals. The plan also includes dental, vision, hearing, and prescription drug coverage, all at no additional cost.
Don't delay. Call to see if the new benefits are available in your area.
Call the number on your screen now. It's free.
Call 1-800-757-1451. That's 1-800-757-1451.